I gripped the steering wheel tighter as my phone lit up the dark car. 2:47 a.m. My heart lurched before I even saw the name on the screen. Sarah. My daughter never called this late. Not unless something was terribly wrong. Mom? Her voice cracked through the speaker, and I could hear she'd been crying. Mom, I need you. I'm at the police station. The world tilted. I pulled over immediately, my hands shaking as I switched on the interior light. Which station? Are you hurt? The 18th Precinct. Downtown. Mom, She choked on the words. Derek called the police on me. He's saying I stole his work, that I attacked him when he confronted me about it. They're treating me like a criminal. Derek, her fiancé, the man she'd been planning to marry in 3 months. I'm on my way. Don't say anything to anyone until I get there. Do you understand me? Mom, there's something else. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He has a lawyer with him. His uncle. They're telling the officers I've been unstable, that I've been jealous of Derek's success, that tonight I finally snapped and… Sarah. I made my voice firm, the same tone I'd used when she was 7 and afraid of thunderstorms. Listen to me carefully. I'm 15 minutes away. You tell them you're invoking your right to remain silent until your attorney arrives. Can you do that? Yes. She was crying harder now. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have… We'll talk when I get there. You have nothing to be sorry for. I ended the call and pressed my foot down on the accelerator. The streets of Chicago blurred past as my mind raced faster than the car. Sarah was a senior architect at Morrison & Associates, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. She'd worked her entire adult life to get there. She'd landed the Riverfront Plaza project 6 months ago, the biggest commission of her career. And Derek. I'd met him exactly twice. Both times, something about him had made my skin crawl, but Sarah had been so happy, so in love. I'd told myself I was being overprotective, that I was imagining things. I should have trusted my instincts. The precinct was a squat concrete building with too many fluorescent lights. I parked in a loading zone I didn't care and strode through the front doors. The desk sergeant looked up, then did a double take. Mrs. Mitchell? I recognized him. Officer Rodriguez. I'd worked with him years ago when I was still the chief building inspector for the city. How many crime scenes had I been called to? How many collapsed structures, fraudulent permits, safety violations that ended in tragedy? Rodriguez had been a rookie then. Where's my daughter? Interview room 3. But ma'am, there's a situation. I know the situation. A man called in a false report against my daughter. Where is he? Rodriguez's face went carefully neutral. He's in room 2 with his attorney. Ma'am, Detective Harris is handling this case. And get Detective Harris. Now. He picked up the phone, and within 30 seconds, a woman in her 40s emerged from a back hallway. Detective Harris stopped short when she saw me, and something like relief crossed her face. Barbara Mitchell. I thought that name looked familiar on the victim statement. She shook her head. Your daughter's the one being accused. Show me to her. She led me down the corridor. Through the window of interview room 2, I caught a glimpse of a man in an expensive suit gesturing animatedly Derek. Next to him sat an older man with silver hair, also in a suit. The uncle lawyer. Room 3 was 2 doors down. Sarah sat at the metal table, her arms wrapped around herself. Her blazer was torn at the shoulder, her face was pale, makeup smudged. She looked up when the door opened, and her expression crumbled. Mom. I crossed to her in 3 strides and wrapped her in my arms. She was 34 years old, a successful architect, engaged to be married, and she felt as small and frightened as she had at 10 when the kids at school had teased her for being too tall, too smart, too different. I'm here, I whispered. I'm here now. Detective Harris cleared her throat. Mrs. Mitchell, I need to explain the situation. Mr. Garrett, the complainant, claims that Mrs. Garrett Mitchell stole design work for the Riverfront Plaza project. He says when he confronted her tonight at her apartment, she attacked him. He has visible injuries, scratches on his face and arms. I looked at Sarah. Did you scratch him? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. He grabbed me. He was going through my desk, pulling out files, and when I tried to stop him, he pushed me into the wall. I scratched him trying to get away. Mom, the riverfront design is mine. I've been working on it for 6 months. Derek hasn't been part of my team since we got engaged. He moved to the suburban branch office in April. I turned back to Harris. Has anyone examined my daughter for injuries? The paramedics looked at her. A full examination. Photos. Documentation. Harris nodded slowly. We can arrange that. Good. And I'll need to see the complaint statement. All of it. Mrs. Mitchell, I can't just… Detective Harris. I kept my voice level. How many cases did we work together when I was with the city? The warehouse collapse on Western Avenue? The apartment building on Division Street where the contractor had falsified every single inspection report? Her jaw tightened. 15. We closed 15 cases together. And did I ever, even once, interfere with an investigation that wasn't righteous? She studied my face for a long moment, then pulled out her phone. I can show you the initial report. But Barbara, this is complicated. Mr. Garrett's attorney is Randall Garrett. He used to be a prosecutor. He has connections. He's already talking about pressing charges for assault and theft of intellectual property. I skimmed through the statement on her phone. It was detailed. Too detailed. Derek claimed Sarah had been acting erratically for weeks, that she'd been staying late at the office, growing paranoid and possessive about the Riverfall project, that tonight he'd gone to her apartment out of concern and discovered her with printed copies of his preliminary sketches he claimed to have created in January before the project was even assigned. It was a good story, methodical, calculating. It was also a lie. Sarah, I said quietly, tell me everything. From the beginning. She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. The Riverfront Plaza project came to our firm last November. Mr. Morrison assigned it to me because of my specialty in mixed-use waterfront development. Derek and I had just gotten engaged. We were happy. Or I thought we were. She took a breath, trying to steady herself. In January, Derek got reassigned to the suburban branch. He said it was temporary, just helping with a staffing shortage. But he started asking me about Riverfront all the time. What design elements I was using. What the client wanted. At first, I thought he was just interested. We talked about work all the time before. When did things change? March. I showed him my concept sketches, just rough ideas. He said they were brilliant. That I was brilliant. Then a week later, he told me Mr. Morrison wanted to see revised sketches. That he'd spoken to my boss directly. I felt my spine straighten. Did Morrison actually ask for revisions? No. When I asked him about it, he had no idea what I was talking about. But Derek said I must have misunderstood, that I'd been stressed and working too hard. He suggested I take a long weekend, clear my head. Classic gaslighting. I'd seen it 100 times, just never directed at my own daughter. What happened tonight? Derek came over around 9. He had a key. I was working on the final presentation, it's due next week. He said he wanted to talk about wedding plans, but then he went straight to my desk. He started pulling out files, looking through my sketches. When I asked what he was doing, he said, "These are mine, Sarah, you know they're mine." Her voice broke. I thought he was joking at first, but then he pulled out his phone and started taking photos of my work. I tried to stop him, and he grabbed my wrist so hard I thought it would break. He shoved me into the wall. That's when I scratched him. I was trying to get away. He let go, pulled out his phone, and called 911. He told them I'd attacked him, that I'd stolen his work and assaulted him when he discovered it. Then what? He left. Just walked out with some of my files under his arm. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They saw the scratches on his face and the torn shoulder of my jacket, and they believed him. They brought me here. Detective Harris had been listening silently. Now she spoke up. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need to ask. Your daughter's apartment, did Mr. Proster do Garrett have legal access? He had a key, if that's what you mean," Sarah said bitterly. "I gave it to him when we got engaged. And the design files. Can you prove they're yours?" Sarah looked at me, and I saw the same expression I'd seen when she was 16 and had been accused of cheating on a math test because she'd scored too high. Hurt. Disbelief that anyone would question her integrity. I have the original files on my laptop, time-stamped. Every revision, every iteration. 6 months of work. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I have emails from Mr. Morrison about the project. Meeting notes. Site visit photos. I went to the riverfront location 8 times to study the space and the surroundings. Derek never went. Not once. I looked at Detective Harris. You need to see these files. All of them. I will. But Mrs. Mitchell, even if the intellectual property dispute goes in your daughter's favor, there's still the assault claim. Mr. Garrett has documented injuries. Self-defense, I said flatly. And I'm willing to bet my retirement that Sarah has injuries too. Bruises on her wrist where he grabbed her. Maybe bruising on her shoulder or back from being shoved into the wall. Sarah touched her left wrist unconsciously. It hurts. I didn't even think about it until now. We need photos. Documentation. Tonight. I turned back to Harris. And I need to speak with whoever's interviewing Derek Garrett. Barbara. Please. She sighed. Wait here. After she left, I sat down next to Sarah and took her hand carefully, avoiding the wrist that was already starting to bruise. Why didn't you tell me something was wrong? Her eyes filled with tears again. Because I didn't want you to think I'd failed. You worked so hard for your career, dealt with so much discrimination as a woman in construction and building inspection. You never let anyone push you around. And here I am, successful, independent, and I let a man manipulate me for months without even realizing it. Sarah, listen to me. I squeezed her hand. Recognizing manipulation while you're in the middle of it is nearly impossible. These men, they don't show you who they really are all at once. They do it slowly. A small lie here, a little gaslighting there. By the time you realize what's happening, you're already doubting your own perceptions. How do you know? I took a breath. I'd never told her this story. Never told anyone. Because when I was 26, fresh out of my inspector certification program, I worked for a man who did the same thing to me. He was my supervisor. He took credit for my reports, undermined my assessments, and when I finally confronted him, he reported me for insubordination. It took me a year to clear my name and get transferred to another department. Sarah stared at me. I never knew that. Because I was ashamed. Just like you are now. But shame is their weapon, Sarah. They rely on it to keep us silent. The door opened. Detective Harris stood there with a woman I didn't recognize, mid-50s, sharp suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Assistant State's Attorney Jennifer Chen. She's been called in to review the case. Chen stepped forward and extended her hand. Barbara Mitchell, I know who you are. You prevented my family from buying a condo in a building that collapsed 6 months later. I remembered the case. A developer cutting corners, falsifying inspections. I'd red-tagged the entire building. I'm glad your family was safe, I said. She sat down across from us. Detective Harris has briefed me on the situation. I've also been made aware that Randall Garrett is representing the complainant. He's already filed preliminary charges and is pushing for immediate arrest on both the assault and the intellectual property theft. On what grounds? I kept my voice steady. The only evidence is Derek Garrett's statement and some scratches that are consistent with my daughter defending herself. He also claims to have preliminary sketches dated January 15th, before the project was officially assigned. Sarah's head snapped up. That's impossible. The client didn't even approach our firm until November. Chen pulled out her tablet and turned it toward us. On the screen was a sketch rough but recognizable. A mixed-use building with a distinctive curved facade and terraced levels. It looked remarkably similar to Sarah's design, but I'd spent 30 years examining architectural drawings, building plans, and fraudulent documents. I leaned closer, studying the image. This is a digital file, I said, not a scan of a physical sketch. So show me the metadata. Creation date, modification date, the works. Chen tapped the screen a few times, then her eyebrows rose. The file was created on January 15th, as stated, but it was modified 3 days ago. Sarah leaned over to look. That's not just modified. Look at the layer structure. This was created using version 6.2 of Draft Pro. That version wasn't released until August. I know because I upgraded specifically to use the new rendering features. Chen looked at me. Is that verifiable? Easily. Draft Pro keeps release logs. Any architect would know that. I felt a cold smile forming. Derek made a critical mistake. He created a fake document, backdated the file creation date, but used current software to do it. The kind of mistake someone makes when they're not actually an architect working with these programs daily. What's his specialty? Chen asked. Sarah's voice was hollow. Project management. He stopped doing actual design work 3 years ago. He supervises teams now. Chen made a note on her tablet. What else can you show me? For the next hour, Sarah walked through her process. She pulled up emails showing Mr. Morrison assigning her the project, meeting notes from client consultations, her own sketches, dated and time-stamped in her cloud storage, showing the evolution of her design from rough concepts in December to refined plans by June. Photos from site visits with metadata showing date, time, and GPS location. Most damning of all, Derek's work calendar, which Sarah had shared access to through their firm's system. From November through March, he'd been logged into the suburban office every single day. He hadn't attended a single meeting about the riverfront project. Chen reviewed everything methodically, asking questions, requesting additional documentation. Finally, she looked up. Miss Mitchell, did you give Mr. Garrett permission to enter your apartment tonight? No. I mean, he had a key, but I didn't invite him over. He just showed up. Did you give him permission to photograph or remove your design files? Absolutely not. Chen turned to Harris. I need to speak with Mr. Garrett again. And I want IT forensics to examine that preliminary sketch file, all metadata, not just what shows on the surface. What about the assault charge? I asked. Miss Mitchell has visible injuries consistent with defensive wounds. Mr. Garrett's injuries are superficial and limited to areas easily reachable by someone being grabbed or restrained. Without additional evidence of aggressive intent, I don't see grounds for assault charges against your daughter. She stood. Give me 20 minutes. After she left, Sarah slumped in her chair. I still can't believe this is happening. We were going to get married in 3 months. I thought he loved me. He loved what you could do for him, I said gently. Your talent, your success, your connections. How did you see it? You only met him twice. The way he touched you. He kept his hand on your lower back, but it wasn't protective or affectionate. It was possessive, controlling where you moved, who you talked to. And when you mentioned the riverfront project at dinner, his expression changed for just a second. He looked resentful. I thought I was being paranoid when I noticed things like that. He kept telling me I was stressed, imagining problems that weren't there. That's what they do. We sat in silence for a while. Then Sarah said quietly, "Thank you for coming, for believing me. Always, no matter what." 20 minutes turned into 45. Finally, the door opened again. Chen stepped in, followed by Detective Harris. Chen's expression was grim. IT pulled the full metadata on that sketch file. It was created 4 days ago using a trial version of Draft Pro 6, 2 registered to Derek Garrett's personal email. He also made the amateur mistake of leaving track changes enabled. We can see that he started with a screenshot of one of your earlier sketches and traced over it, making intentional changes to try to obscure the similarity. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. It gets worse, Harris added. We've been going through security footage from your office building. Mr. Garrett was there on 3 separate occasions after hours in the past 2 weeks. Each time he used his old security badge, which should have been deactivated when he transferred to access the senior architect's floor. He was logged into your workspace area for an average of 90 minutes each visit. He was copying my files, Sarah whispered. All of them. Chen nodded. We also spoke with Mr. Garrett's uncle, the attorney. When confronted with the forensic evidence, he had some concerns about his nephew's version of events. He's withdrawn as counsel. What happens now? I asked. We're dropping all charges against Miss Mitchell. I'm recommending charges against Mr. Garrett for criminal trespass, attempted theft of intellectual property, and making a false police report. The assault claim gets murkier. It becomes he said, she said, about who initiated physical contact, but given the evidence of his other deceptive behavior, I don't think any prosecutor would pursue charges against your daughter. The relief was so intense I felt dizzy. Sarah started crying, but this time it was different. Not fear or shame, just the release of 6 months of pressure she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. Chen handed me her card. Your daughter should file a restraining order, and I'd recommend she speak with her firm's HR and legal team about Derek's unauthorized access to her workspace. We will. Thank you. After Chen and Harris left, I helped Sarah gather her things. Her hands were still shaking as she collected her phone, her keys, the tablet with all her design files. I need to go home, she said. But Derek has a key. What if... You're coming home with me tonight. Tomorrow, we'll have the locks changed. And you'll file that restraining order. She nodded, too exhausted to argue. We walked out through the precinct together. In the parking lot, Sarah stopped and turned to me. Mom, there's something else I need to tell you. My heart sank. What? About 3 months ago, I got a call from a woman named Jennifer. She said she used to work at Morrison and Associates. That she left the firm 5 years ago after Derek, after he sabotaged her work on a major project and made it look like her designs were stolen from another architect. Why didn't she come forward? She said no one believed her, that Derek's uncle was already a successful attorney and made threats about defamation. So she left the firm and started over somewhere else. Sarah's voice cracked. She called to warn me. She said Derek follows a pattern: find a talented woman, get close to her, take credit for her work. I didn't believe her. I thought she was just bitter about their breakup. But Mom, she was telling the truth. And I didn't listen. I pulled her close. You listen now. That's what matters. We drove home in silence. Sarah fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head against the window. I thought about all the women like Jennifer, like Sarah, like me at 26. How many of us had been silenced by shame, by fear, by the calculated manipulation of men who saw our talents as resources to exploit. But I also thought about Detective Harris, about ASA Chen, about the system that, for once, had actually listened, had actually looked at the evidence instead of just believing the man with the expensive lawyer and the convincing story. Progress. Slow, imperfect progress. The next morning, over coffee in my kitchen, Sarah called her boss, Mr. Morrison. I listened as she explained everything: Derek's unauthorized access, the stolen files, the false police report. To his credit, Morrison didn't question or doubt. He told her to take the rest of the week off, that the firm's legal team would handle Derek, and that her presentation for the Riverfront project would be rescheduled to the following week. He wants to make it right, Sarah said after she hung up. He's firing Derek, revoking his access to all firm systems, and he's reporting him to the state licensing board. Good. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. Mom, I need to ask you something. That supervisor who took credit for your work, what happened to him? I smiled. He was fired 6 months after I transferred out. Turned out I wasn't the only woman whose work he'd stolen. Once one of us spoke up and the others realized they weren't alone, his whole house of cards collapsed. Did you ever get credit for your reports? Some of them. Not all. But I got something better: the reputation as someone who wouldn't be intimidated. That carried me through the rest of my career. Sarah set down her mug and looked at me directly. I want to talk to Jennifer, the woman who warned me. And I want to find out if there were others. If Derek did this to anyone else. That's going to be hard. It's going to mean reliving all of this. I know. But if I stay silent, he'll do it again. To someone else. Some other woman who thinks she's found love and partnership and instead finds a man who wants to consume her success. I reached across the table and took her hand. Then we'll do it together. Over the next 3 weeks, we found 2 other women. One was Jennifer, who flew in from Seattle to give a statement. The other was a woman named Rachel, who'd worked with Derek at his previous firm in Boston. Her story was nearly identical to Sarah's: the manipulation, the gaslighting, the theft of work. All 3 women filed complaints with the state licensing board. Derek's architectural license was suspended pending investigation. His uncle, Randall, resigned from his law firm after it came out that he'd known about at least one previous incident and had used his position to intimidate the victim into silence. Sarah's presentation of the Riverfront Plaza project happened on schedule. She stood in front of the client and Morrison and Associates senior partners and walked through her design: the curved facade that maximized natural light, the terraced levels that created public space and green areas, the innovative water management system that made the development both beautiful and sustainable. She was brilliant, confident, whole. When she finished, Mr. Morrison stood and started applauding. The client followed. Then the rest of the room. Sarah's face flushed, but she smiled a real smile, not the careful, controlled expression I'd seen her wear for months. The client approved the design that day. Morrison offered Sarah a partnership track position, and when she called to tell me the news, her voice was clear and strong. I did it, Mom. All by myself. You always could, sweetheart. You just needed to remember that. 3 months later, I stood in Sarah's new apartment, the one with the locks Derek had never had keys to, and watched her hang framed sketches from the riverfront project on her living room wall. They were beautiful, each one signed with her name in the corner. "These should be in a gallery," I said. "Maybe someday. Right now I want them here, where I can see them every day and remember what I'm capable of." She turned to me, and her expression was serious. "Mom, I've been thinking about starting a support group for women architects who've experienced workplace manipulation or had their work stolen. There are more of us than anyone wants to admit." "That's a wonderful idea. Would you help me? Share your story?" I thought about that 26-year-old version of myself, sitting in a supervisor's office while he told her she was too emotional, too sensitive, that she needed to learn how to take constructive criticism. I thought about the shame that had kept me silent for years. "Yes," I said. "I'll help." Sarah hugged me tight. "Thank you. For everything. For coming that night. For believing me. For teaching me that asking for help isn't failure." "It never is," I said. "It's the bravest thing we can do." Later that evening, after Sarah had gone to bed, I sat on her balcony and looked out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, the Riverfront Plaza would rise next year, a testament to my daughter's talent and vision. Her name would be on the dedication plaque. Her design would shape the city's waterfront for generations. But more important than any building was this. Sarah knew her worth now. She knew that her voice mattered, that her work had value beyond what anyone else could take from it. And she knew she was never alone. I thought about all the women who'd come before us, who'd fought these battles without support or recognition, and all the women who would come after, who would benefit from the paths we were clearing. The work wasn't finished. It might never be finished. But tonight, in this moment, we had won. And that was enough.